Welcome to Primary Complete, episode 010. In this episode, we're joined by Matt Mylott. Matt is a man of many talents. He's a Marine Corps veteran, police officer, holds an MBA in international business, and is currently serving as assistant director at the Swain Center for Executive Education at the University of North Carolina in Wilmington. In our conversation, we dive into who Matt is, his struggles, lessons learned, and his vision for his future. Matt rants about building relationships and the value of subject matter experts in areas of personal imperfection. Also, we discuss his new project, where he's a co-host on the hit podcast Signal Fire Radio. Signal Fire is focused on aiding the military community transitioning back into the civilian world. They can be found on all your listening and viewing platforms. Go over, like, and subscribe. Thank you all so much for your support, and if it's your first time listening to Primary Complete, please like and subscribe. Hope you all enjoy as much as we did, Mr. Matt Mylott.
So I grew up in the Bay Area, South Bay, so San Jose, Los Gatos area, just north of Santa Cruz, all within like 20, 30 minutes. And then I went to high school up in Sacramento, so about 2 hours northeast. But really, I grew up in Sacramento, Folsom Lake area, about 45 minutes east of Napa and about an hour and a half southwest of Tahoe. So, I mean, right in the foothills of the Sierras and super dry weather. And we didn't have the beach. The beach was a good hour and a half away, but you got San Francisco, Lake Tahoe, wine country, and then the valley in between. And it's like, I mean, I eat, sleep, and breathe ocean, and preferably with the salt.
Sure.
But I mean, that's the cool thing about California, is that it's got every aspect of diversity for the most part that you could have. You could have the, like desert tropical, like Mediterranean, that is basically like the southern half of coastal California. You got the high desert, you got the low desert, you got the freaking Sierras, which are some of the most awesome mountains in North America, and then you got wine country, and just the versatility of that. I didn't really appreciate growing up. As we were discussing over dinner, I foolishly assumed joining the Marine Corps at 18, being from California, that they're going to station me at Camp Pendleton. It's like, well, my family, I mean, all my family except my parents are just north of Pendleton. And, I got sent out to Lejeune. First, I had never really experienced humidity at this level.
Yeah.
And I came out here in July of 2000. Literally landed July 3rd. So it was a holiday weekend. I check in, I stay at hey, we got this boot checking into his first unit barracks at Lejeune. And then I got in the ocean, and I'm like, why is the water like 85 degrees? And I'm getting stung by all these jellyfish. But the preceding 8 years or so, I ended up getting married, went to college, and, started a family. And then we moved back to California in 2008 when I separated permanently from the Marine Corps. And when we first got out there, the first couple of years, I was still in that same groove, like California. It's like inside my life up until I was in the Marine Corps, or until I joined the Marine Corps, my whole life is summed up in a Red Hot Chili Peppers album. If you listen to Chili Peppers album or Sublime, I felt like that was my life growing up. So the first couple of years after we got out there, at this point I'm married. We had our first daughter. Still have her, by the way,
right.
Alive and kicking. She'll be 13 in a couple of weeks. But I became a cop, and I walked away from this almost corporate job with Hewlett-Packard, and loved being a cop. It was just, natural fit. And I was back in that community of, the brotherhood and, the thin red and blue and black lines. But dude, after a couple of years, I mean, it didn't help that my jurisdiction was like during business hours. Like if I was working swing shift, it would take me 2 hours to get from my house to the sheriff's office. Just insane.
Yeah.
And it didn't really bother me, because that's kind of part of just the culture in California. My sister, when 15 years ago, when they bought their first condo in the city of Orange, in Orange County, her office was 9 miles away in Newport Beach. And it was something like an hour and a half commute. She'd get on 55 and it was just crawling coffin boxes on 55 for an hour and a half. And you're covering 9 miles. But, once it started kind of like having this ancillary effect on every aspect of my life as a husband, as a father, as a brother, started affecting my marriage. And then it got kind of exacerbated after I was on patrol for like almost 5 years. And, I had a fair amount of tactical experience because of the Marine Corps. I had the opportunity to try out for the SWAT team, got on the SWAT team, and then fast forward another almost 4 years. And, the whole time I would hear statistics being spat off by friends as I was transitioning from the Marine Corps and then kind of going into law enforcement. And they were super emphatic that, hey, dude, just be sure you make a good decision and know that this is the best decision for you and your family. Because the divorce rate and the suicide rate and exact same stuff that every first responder industry deals with. And I was like, dude, I got multiple combat tours in the Marine Corps. I'm fine, totally fine.
Yeah, you feel like you don't have to worry about that, right?
No, totally. It's just like, dude, I've handled deployments, your buddy's dying and every aspect of that. And I thought I was just, this is a walk in the park for me. And, fast forward. And patrol was a struggle. Shift work, God bless you guys, man. It's gnarly in every aspect of it. If it's not your sleep pattern, it's your stresses. It's the stress that obviously that it exacerbates on your family. But dude, after I got on the SWAT team and then my schedule got uber unpredictable because, we'd be in the shoot house all day Wednesday for like 12 hours. And then my weekend would be Thursday and Friday. I'd get home Wednesday night thinking, oh, we're going to go to the city tomorrow and go to a Giants game, or, my daughter's got a soccer game. And I wouldn't even download all my SWAT gear. And I'm sitting there cracking open a beer, kissing the girls. My phone rings and it's like, hey, we got a call out. And it was just like, I was grateful for how quickly God, because in my eyes, it was completely God that was just like, dude, this is not a sustainable route for you or for your family. And it took 4 years of, because there's the whole sex appeal being on the SWAT team, which is totally not. We all know it ain't super high speed at all.
It seems pretty sexy though. Yeah. From this seat, it seems like
SWAT I saw the movie.
Yeah, exactly. And being a former SWAT operator, it's like if I watch that movie today, I'd be like, hell yeah, sign me up, bro. And it's just like dynamic entry. It's just like, yeah, that's in the movies. We don't do that. No, we set up a perimeter and we just let the negotiators take over. And out of all the missions I did, God, maybe 5% of them, had any sort of high speed entry and 2-3 man stack going into a room and screaming and fast movement. It's like, no, we train for that, but that ain't what we live. But that was like at the bottom of my concerns. After the stresses that just the biggest stress was just having an insanely unpredictable schedule. And I know you guys can appreciate this.
Oh yeah.
100%. And then I over the series, my last couple of years of the SO, I had the experience where I had an extremely close friend that ended up, who was also a cop, sustained a back injury in a TC traffic. Do you guys call them TCs here? Traffic collision?
MVC, motor vehicle crash.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know in the South, you guys love saying vehicle. Anyways, we call MVCs TCs. We got to talk faster in California. So, it's a TC, bro. So he sustained a back injury, and then he ended up being on light duty. So he worked the courts for a couple of years. Well, unbeknownst to all of us, he acquired a narc addiction, painkillers. Long story short, ended up taking his life a couple of years later. And he stayed really on patrol with us and part of the team until just a couple of days before he passed. And then an incident occurred that obviously compromised his role as a peace officer. So. And it was a very profound moment for me. And I haven't even spent a whole lot of time talking about it because, I've had those experiences in the Marine Corps also. But I think experience it on the law enforcement side, on the domestic side, it just has a completely, it's that same level of deep trauma and just emotional turmoil. Seeing, you know, he was married and, you know, has kids. It just, all of those things contributed to what I ultimately consider my vision. And I feel like historically, I've been married for almost 17 years, and I feel like I'm not kidding you guys, up until the last year or so, I've just started really gaining a vision for me, my family, my marriage. And it's really humbling to say, because I got plenty of friends that are just like, dude, this is my vision. Me and my wife are going to be here when we retire. And, you know, I'm going to make sure my kids have these experiences and that our marriage like galvanizes who we are as a family. And anyways, so when that happened with our boy, coupled with every other aspect of my personal life falling apart. Now, the thing that really sucked, and I'm not bragging, I was a good cop. I was a good street cop, and I was definitely a good operator. And I attribute that to all my experience from the Marine Corps. And, you know, all my buddies that weren't in law, they're just like, dude, you got the job and you're like living the life. And inside, man, it was just like, I mean,
just not fulfilling, or
it wasn't fulfilling. I mean, it wasn't challenged. And unfortunately, and we were kind of talking about this a little earlier, but I went through my entire Marine Corps experience, and I walked away from it knowing that at my core, at who Matt is as a person, I was the same dude. You know, and I had the fortunate privilege of being a part of both invasions. And, you know, I had what I felt like a pretty iconic experience in both theaters, and grateful for my experiences. But I walked away from the Marine Corps knowing that I was the same person. Got into law enforcement, as I said earlier, dude, I got this, made in the shade. It can't in any way compare to my military experiences. And sure as hell did. When I got on the SWAT team, I was exposed to certain social practices. And I experienced this on patrol also, but, you know, off hours and just the dynamics of how shift life and the toll that it can take, particularly on a relationship with a significant other. And then, you know, I mean, to be honest, my tenure on the SWAT team, we were together all the time. There was 10 of us dudes, and we had a female, Diana, and she was freaking awesome. And talk about having some respect for the female aspect of first responders. God bless. Like the stuff that I saw, the few females that I had the good fortune of working with, the stuff that they endured, not only endured, but they came out just like, I mean, like they're wearing, you know, plate carriers. They're just like, no, it's just bouncing off of them. And especially now being a father of 2 girls, it's just like, oh, you know, because at the end of the day, it's like, I want them to do what they want to do. So it's horrific thinking about them being in that environment. But after my time on the SWAT team, it was just, I found myself, it was changing who I was as a person. And it sucks because people are like, oh, I can only imagine all the stuff you saw. And I was like, no, it had nothing to do with anything I saw. Because trust me, I had already seen like pretty much everything I could see, with the exception of like, you know, trials against, or crimes against children. That, I mean, because that's raw for anybody. But no, dude, it was changing who I was as a person. And like I told you, it's like I woke up one morning and it was the last thread of my marriage, and my anxiety was through the roof. I mean, my psychiatrist was pumping. Like, dude, I was almost taking Ativan on the daily. At times when I was like on duty, and, you know, I was always talking to like the guys on the team. They're just like, well, you know, just definitely, I mean, keep that under wraps, and, you know, only use it if you absolutely have to. And I was just the epitome of, dude, if I stayed in that industry and I stayed in that profession, I was going to be that guy that, you know, goes off the deep end or has a heart attack at 50. And I was like, you know what, at this point, I remember telling my buddy JD, who he's still there. He's a DA investigator now. But I told him, dude, I would rather work part-time at Taco Bell and rent a 2-bedroom apartment in a seedy part of town than continue any of this. We had a baller, you know, we had a 3,200 square foot house, living in a classy, you know, NorCal neighborhood, and just had every aspect of like the good life. And I know I'm probably preaching the choir because like everybody has that story, but I was just like, I'm over it.
That decision to save the marriage and move back, divorce is all in the fire department. How did you recognize, like, if I don't change something now, this family's going to be busted up. What was that recognition? What did it look like?
Well, there's the overt aspect that my wife told me that.
Yeah, that'll be real clear, right? Yeah.
She was just like, oh God, I hate thinking about it, but it's good to think about too. I think she said, me and the girls aren't staying here. We're moving back to the East Coast. And
That's
anyway,
pretty clear.
Yeah. And anyway, it was so weird because it was such a traumatic experience. And I mean, dude, anytime you go through like those super volatile, dark times in a relationship, married or not married, I mean, it sucks. I remember growing up thinking that, waiting for your dad to come home because you're penning a whoop ass because you did something. I remember thinking this has got to be the worst feeling in the world. No, it ain't. Relational, like, trauma or, stresses, like, as an adult. Oh my God. So it was almost a relief, like in a very healthy way. Because probably for the last year and a half, 2 years up until that moment, I was telling myself it was just my conscience saying, dude, we can't keep doing this. We can't, and I kept feeling myself falling off this like moral wagon. And like, when I would be off, I would always be analyzing to like the nuclear level, every single thing I documented, everything I said. Oh, I shouldn't have, stuck my pistol into this guy's forehead. It's like, and you're just, I'm going to, federal court. And anyways, it was a relief when she told me that. And it was really crazy because out of the blue, within contemporaneous to when like it really hit the fan, like within a day, I randomly got a couple of texts from a couple of my boys back here in Wilmington that, are part of our church crew, our surf crew, still are. And they had just randomly reached out like, dude, I'm thinking about you. I love you. Hope you guys are all doing well. And it just, I remember because it was the day after we, everything hit the fan. I'm going to work. And I got a couple of texts from just a couple of my buddies, and it was just like boom. I knew, and I literally went right in. Didn't even talk to Sarah. Mind you, she told me that her and the girls were leaving, so it was given. But I walked right in. I was just like, Jimmy, who was our undersheriff at the time, our SWAT commander. I was just like, I need to talk to you. I go, and he's just like, and there had been I had a very embarrassing incident. I was working cover shift patrol, and we had a couple of. Recently, there was a prison in our county, and a couple of inmates had escaped. And I don't think I've ever shared this really with anybody.
Perfect.
But I had a negligent discharge when we were searching this this semi truck yard. Me and my buddy Justin, and we were there. I mean, the FBI was there. The critical task force from the prison was there. Every local agency, CHP. So everybody's searching in their own little areas, and it was a really cool night. And condensation had set over on these semi trucks. So me and Justin are just sitting here clearing a bunch of these trucks. Well, it's a Glock 21, so it's a full size 45. And I got little Irish hands. So, it was a big gun for me. Yeah. But, that was my second area on the SWAT team. So I became very proficient with it. Anyways, I peeked up into a cab. I was standing 1 foot on the exterior fuel tank. And because of the condensation, I slipped. And when I slipped, my finger was on the trigger, boom.
Sympathetic reflex.
And man, it was the most. And this was
desk pop.
You know what? No, this was a couple of days after it hit the fan with my wife, and it was just like, oh, and everybody and their moms on the net at that point. We had a code 33, so it was like radio silence. The warden for the prison was at the command post that was right around the corner from where I was. And I lit off a round, and there's no radio traffic. And Justin comes running around. He's like, "Are you all right? You all right?" He's like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "Dude, indeed." He's just like, "Dude, you got to put it out." And I was like, "Oh my God." So I ended up, airing. I had an ND, and my watch commander called me like on my cell. He's just like, "Dude, come back to the CP." And I go back, and I'm just like. At this point, I'm like, dude, I have violated every aspect of my tactical proficiency. I don't want to be on the SWAT team. This is like a career ender, and I'm totally willing to accept that. And I go back, and Jim, who was our A team leader for the SWAT team at the time, he was just like, dude, just go home, write a quick supplemental report to what happened, and go home. And anyway, so it was all those elements. That's a long story, longer.
No, I love that one. Yeah, that was awesome.
Anytime we make cops look like idiots.
Dude, that decision, your wife's kind of flipping out, and then that incident at work. Where was your buddy, the one that committed suicide, time wise? What's that time frame look like?
Yeah, it was a while before that. I mean, less than a year, but probably around like 6 months or so, leading up to that.
Yeah.
And it was really bizarre, and it's really, really dark for me to go back and like put myself back in those moments, especially the last couple of years. But I swear, almost every single day there was some other key significance thing that was really nuanced and like not super obvious, but like every day there was something telling me like something's got to change.
Yeah.
And it was just the most random things.
That's one of those you can trust your gut kind of situations where it's like your body's telling you like we got to change something.
Yeah, but it literally took like 2 years of just things building up and building up and building up. And not to mention, it's important for me to highlight the fact that, as I mentioned earlier, my drinking got out of control. And the scary part was and I had my fair amount of times of, being intoxicated. But I wasn't drinking to get drunk. I mean, I was literally just trying to shut my mind off. Cause just like, I'm sure it's the same as you guys. You end your shift and you're just like, you're thinking about liability and you're thinking about, did I document? Did I do everything right? Did I go through the checklist? And, and then it exacerbated with the greater responsibilities I had on patrol. And then same thing, getting on the more tactical side. And, it became obvious after 2 long years, mind you, I'm a very slow learner, that change is imminent and change is absolutely obligated in order for me to positively affect the future path of my life and my family.
Do you think there's anything your your wife was doing to try to communicate her concerns? You just weren't receptive to them, or that side of your brain wasn't turned on, or the communication was just not effective for whatever reason? I feel like she probably was. And then I know I have a bad habit of that at times. I just don't hear it. Like it doesn't resonate with me what they're trying to say.
Yeah. And that's an industry standard. I mean,
sure.
And it's not, so it's probably also important to mention that we've always been pretty strong churchgoers. Not that I'm a, clean cut, like kind mouth. Cause we're part of a particular tribe. Sure. But yeah, we've always taken our faith extremely seriously. It's always been central to our DNA as individuals, and as a family. So like we had a lot of positive influence, from the small group we were involved with at church. So, it's like a group of like 5 or 6 married couples or soon to be married couples, that have, a common set of values as far as relationship goes and what it means to be committed, and, our spiritual beliefs with the way what we believe God designed, for a relationship to be and how it should look. So, there was those positive influences, but one of the biggest problems was being on swing shift. We could never commit because my shifts were always rotating every 3 months. And, for an agency the size that I was at, to be as junior as I was when I was on patrol, I was working weekends for my entire time on patrol. And fortunately I was able to get on the SWAT team, which helped out a little bit. But I feel like she tried to put all the things in place, when she saw that, and heaven forbid, if you ever have an Ativan, if I have a drink of anything within 12 hours of having an Ativan, and I'm talking like a 1 milligram maybe, but it was something I was a frequent flyer with because of my anxiety. And, probably one of the first real triggers I remember her bringing up was if I had a drink and, if I could kill a fifth of anything in one night and I could make my way to bed and wake up next day and be functioning, be fine. I would have 1 beer, and if I've had Ativan, it's like I'm blowing a 0.15 within 30 minutes. It's just, I get all loopy. So, that was probably the first like obvious trigger that she was like, dude, you either need to fix your medication or not drink or a combination of both. And then it increased to just flat out drinking too much.
Yeah.
We'd go to Costco. In California, you can buy liquor anywhere, as it should be. You should be able to buy it anywhere. You can literally buy a handle of whiskey at the gas station. But we'd go to Costco, and I'd get a handle of this, that, and the other. But the reasoning was because, well, no, I want this to have on hand because, like, we both believe, like, 2 things that we've been put on earth to do is to be hospitable and to just really be passionate about our friends. And I am to this day. Like at the end of the day, I'm a people person and I love my friends.
Those are good rules. I like them.
No doubt.
Just not drinking, a handle of anything over a Saturday and Sunday night. And that's what it grew into, so I'd go buy, 3 handles or whatever. And then within a couple of days, she's like, where was that Jameson? It's like, oh, I don't know. We were drinking it the other night. She's like, no, Tim had 1 drink. It's like that disappeared in 48 hours. And it turned into that. And, and my justification was, babe, did I look drunk? Was I slurring my speech, unsteady gait? And then, that was probably like the precursors.
She was trying to tell you that she was displeased with your actions and where she thought your path was taking you.
Right.
You just weren't hearing it that way.
Dude, hell yeah. And that's one of the things that it's always been like the biggest thing for me to accept. But at the same time, when my wife sees me making exceptions in how I behave, in particular as how I represent my family, with my friends and our family friends, but also the example I set for my daughters. So, my wife has always done a very good job about not letting things go. Sometimes she brings it up when I feel it's inappropriate and I make it known. And then I end up having to apologize for reacting instead of responding.
Right.
But really after the drinking, so I went from Ativan to like excessive alcohol. And I've never talked, dude, we're like hitting like a bunch of like,
it's the brick.
new experiences for me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the brick. It's pulling it.
Yeah. And that warm firehouse lighting.
Yeah.
So, I think the moral evolution I was kind of going through at the time, it became officially evident to me when that started happening. And, unfortunately I had, my ups and downs for the following like year and a half. And then it just came crashing down. Like it all happened at once.
I worked through this thought, but, and this came from actually my wife. When we probably 6 or 7 years deep into our marriage, she just, we got where we could communicate very well. And she told me the hardest part for her with being a first responder wife was that we would go on tour. What we call a tour, the way our shifts work is we're 24 on, 24 off, 24 on, 24 off, 24 on, then we get a 4-day break. And then you start that rotation back over. So it would be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you're on 24s. Then you would be off Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, start back Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, and just blip, 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 so on, so on, so on. She told me the hardest part for her is just my personality. I'm such a fix-it person. I find a problem, I want to fix it. I want it to be fixed and move on. And she would figure out, she would start to, when I would go away for 24 hours, especially that middle and last day, things would start to fall in line with her. Like she was running the home, she was taking care of a kid. Her life was patterned out perfectly. And almost when I would come home and start trying to be fix it and, trying to kind of pick up her pieces or whatever, I thought I was helping, because I want to come back and, be dad and be the best husband that I can be. But on the flip side, I'm more or less kind of interfering into her world. I'm kind of like an imposter because she's starting to kind of get in this groove and getting this routine and figuring things out. And then there's me coming back in and she's like, you're just getting in my way. You're making this worse than it needs to be. So like I said, we can air this or not.
That's exactly the same thing my wife says.
Yeah. It's like you're an imposter almost. It's like you're...
Now that I'm home more, it's like trying to we were having to try to refigure out our family dynamic just from not running working as much shift work, but working more of the part-time shifts. Yeah, the same thing.
So how about that?
I guess my advice would be, and and you probably figured this out as well, is for guys coming back off a shift and, when you're getting, before that 4-day break starts back is, while you're on and off of your 24 rotations, rather than come in and try to pick up where you left off or try to impose and be Mr. Fix-It and kind of take back over. And what we think is getting more of the load from our wives, so we're helping them, when in fact we're not, is just ask.
Yeah.
How can I help you? How can I help you? Versus trying to just, I want to do it. She's been carrying this load. I want to take it from her. I'm home. Yeah, I'm leaving tomorrow, but I want to take it because I'm home now. And that's actually hurting worse than it's helping because, and it makes total sense to me. I
Yeah,
mean,
your intentions are in the right spot.
that's
but it's
right,
just
but I was
not
just doing it
working.
wrong.
Yeah.
So, like I said, we can air that or not. But it's just
Yeah.
an interesting thought, and it's pretty cool to
Yeah,
hear that it was
same exact.
mirrored from you.
And just for my curiosity, how you've been in fire for how long?
Let's see, I got in 2005.
Okay, so going on 16 years.
Yep.
And then how long have you been married?
10.
Okay,
Almost
so
10.
she
Yep.
identified this 4 years ago.
I would say, yeah, but it was more when our first kid was born. You know, because she would be playing mom and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, when you have kids, things change in the house. The loads get harder and stuff like that. So when I was home, I was, you know, let me get up with the kid. Let me do this. Let me do this. Let me do this. I'm home. And it was just like, I don't need you to do that. I've got it. I've been doing this, you know, just let me do me. And rather than try and impose your own will on the situation, just help me. Ask how you can help me versus
Yeah.
Just try to do
that
it.
Makes sense.
See, I was never in that situation, so I definitely that makes sense to me because my wife has always worked full time, which is good and bad. You know, I felt like it was typically probably positively impacting our relationship, given the time that we valued more of being together. You know,
Right.
but she wasn't at home 24/7 when I was gone.
Yeah.
She was doing the same thing. So it's like we got nannies. Fortunately, my mom lived 4 miles away, so she provided heavy support with childcare. But I guarantee my wife would have said something similar being in a similar
Well, my
situation.
wife worked as well, you know, from 8 to 5. I mean, she's a dental assistant. She's a dental assistant, but it was still the aspect of getting the kids out the door in the morning, getting stuff ready so she can drop the kid off at daycare or a mother-in-law's or father-in-law, whatever. And then once she, you know, the routine of picking the child up, then starting the home care once she and the child were together, versus still running a house. I mean, you're a homeowner. There's stuff that we live in the woods. I mean, there's stuff to do all the time. So I was just missing the buck because I was doing what I thought was best. And in fact, I'm just hurting, not helping. So yeah, kudos to her. Like I told you in the beginning, she doesn't hold her tongue. If I'm out of line, she will quickly tell me. So good on her.
Yeah.
But you know, it's just weird. I don't know. I guess us men, you know, we always think what we have to say is best or our way of doing things is the best, especially maybe just me. But in my family dynamic, you know, and I battle with that. I'm like, no, just do it this way or do something, you know, this way. And that's, you know, not always the best case. Whether or not it works out in the end, you know, it's the process for them just as much as it is for us. So,
Yeah. I mean, mine, dude, I just feel like, I don't know. Being married for almost 17 years, I mean, I feel like I've been oblivious to just life's lessons, you know, just being told one thing, you know, through friends that I place confidence in as far as, you know, having a certain level of authority over me because of their experiences. But, gosh, one whole part of this whole, you know, personal and family and visionary transition of who I was, you know, 6 years ago to where I am now. A lot of it has just been eye-opening as far as like, dude, you've been fed this information your whole life. And I just would hear it, and I guess I would choose to just not like really latch onto it and live by it and let it become a part of like my ethos. And, you know, like I said, it's just been within the last year and a half that I've started understanding what it means to like actually have like a vision, you know, for who I am as a person. And it's humbling because I got so many close friends, especially, you know, Rob and Evan, that we do Signal Fire together. They're constantly quoting books and citing, you know, just like King was talking about earlier. It was like they're constantly talking about just like little nuggets of value that they learned from reading or from listening to something. And I'm just not an intellectual person. And I know a huge part of that is just an excuse. But it's humbling because it's just like, oh, well, Matt, yes, you know, Socrates said it this way. And it's like, okay. I watched Bill and Ted, so I do remember who Socrates is. But a huge part of it's also been just me personally maturing as part of this whole process of, who we are professionally and who we are in our home. That's something I've always known. I have been a predominantly immature person, and a huge part of that I really love, because that's just the who Matt is, I mean, when everybody's being serious about something, I'm the one that's going to crack a joke or do something slightly inappropriate just for comic relief and just for the general vibe of who we're with.
Sounds real familiar.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's so funny too, because like when my wife's from the Shenandoah Valley, Virginia, grew up in the country and pretty conservative by nature. She has 2 older brothers that both have great families. But every time we're together for like Christmas or Thanksgiving or something, and like the whole family's together, especially like when the kids are upstairs playing, it's just the adults. Like, leave it up to me. I'm gonna be the one that like drops the ball. That's just like, oh, he just said that. Heaven
right.
forbid if I suggest, hey, let's play Cards Against Humanity, and my wife looks at me like, no, we're not playing. No. Uh-huh. And, my
Epic game, by the way. Yeah.
What's the what do you mean? Have you played that one? What do you mean?
I haven't played that one.
It's kind of the same thing, except you get a picture and you have like 5 cards that have like sayings on it, and then you get one picture and you have to identify which saying would go best with that picture, like being a funny meme.
And of course, it's always inappropriate when it comes from somebody like me.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm to the point now where I have a very very close knit family. All my family is back in Southern California. It's my mom's side of my mom and dad's families. But we have all been extremely close, like early generation Irish Americans, very physically affectionate, and we're very open about how affectionate we are with our families. And so I'm very comfortable being around my family, like to a fault. And, I'll joke around in the same level of banter at times, and sometimes it is straight up inappropriate, but I'll do it in the presence of my mom, and my mom always freaking laughs. She'll laugh hysterically and be like, Matthew, oh gosh, and it's just like, Mom, you're the one that had your baby boy. That's what we do. We're boys, And anyways, so I have a certain affinity to appreciate that aspect of life. And it's got me in trouble. I mean, I felt like it brought kind of like survival practices in the Marine Corps. I mean, God, especially after 9/11, it was just like, we're sitting there getting a warning order when the smoke hasn't even settled from, the Twin Towers, and we're getting ready to go into harm's way. And I'm, the junior guy on the team by far, but mind you, nobody had really been in actual combat, for the most part. And I remember getting a warning brief, and I don't even remember what I said, but I remember going, well, this could probably get me in trouble just being the junior guy on the team, but I'm going to say it anyways. And I remember when we came back 4 or 5 months later and we got back into CONUS, my buddy John was just like, dude, like, I didn't know how I was going to be able to, like, how I was going to function, because we've gone through all this training and all this like psychologic preparation and training and going contingency after contingency for any type of operation. It's like, no matter what happens, I know what's right to do. But then like when it starts like really happening, it's just like, whoa, this is totally not at all what I was expecting. And John was just like, dude, when you cracked that joke, it like flipped a switch inside. I don't know if it was my mind or whatever, but I was just like, no, we're here for a reason. This is what we're trained for. And he said it was a testament to just his, I don't know, his go-to place mentally as, we're trying to just carry forward with doing what was put in front of us. And, but there was also times where it's definitely, got me in trouble, especially when I was a cop.
Oh my God.
Dude, when I was on, it's like, sorry, I'm just calling it how it is. Yeah. It's like, no, you can't do that with the civilians, dude. I do traffic stops and, I remember this one traffic stop, and this was right. I was actually working an overtime shift, and I was on the SWAT team, but I was covering patrol. So I was like, at this point, I was like, I can say what I want on the net, whatever.
Right.
I mean, professionally, of course. But I stopped this car for like expired reg, and it was a semi truck. It was a pickup truck, and we were on the freeway at night, and as I'm approaching the vehicle, I can see inside the bed, and he's got all this hunting gear and camping gear, like nice stuff. And I'm talking to him. I'm just like, hey, the reason why I stopped you, your registration expired. So I asked him to furnish everything, and he gives it to me. And his license was like expired. He had no proof of insurance, his registration. And he was just, and I just asked him when he was getting his idea. I was like, where you been? He's like, I'm heading back to Sacramento. I was on a hunting trip for the weekend with some friends. I was like, okay. So I take him, I back up, I run him out. He comes back like 10:24, I guess, free and clear without whatever. And I go back and I'm just like, here, dude, I'm gonna give you a warning. I literally have the probable cause to take possession of your vehicle right now because, you have expired registration, failed to provide proof of insurance. You're technically an illegal driver right now because your license status. And I was just like, what's the deal? And he was just like, oh, it's just been tight on money. Well, me being all pragmatic, I was just like, I'm no hunter and I'm certainly not an avid outdoorsman, but from the looks of the gear in the back of your truck, I would say it probably cost a pretty penny. So is there a possibility that maybe you have your finances in disorder? And I wasn't thinking, I was giving him a warning so I could, I can kind of chastise him a little bit.
Yeah, right.
I was just like, okay, if I see your vehicle in our county again in the same violations, I'm towing your vehicle. So please take care of this. Drive safely. Have a good night. Give him his stuff, clear the call. Within 90 seconds, my lieutenant raises me on the radio. He's like, 2 Paul 40, Lincoln 1. Give me a 1021 on my cell. It's like, oh, jeez. And I call him and he's just like, what the F are you doing, man? That is the second complaint of the night. I need your audio file and, all this stuff. And it's like, so me being who I am definitely comes across to a fault at times. But every day.
Was that complaint from him?
Yeah. For
How
the
about
person.
that? Yeah.
Well, and I told Gary, he was our SWAT SWAT team leader. So we were tight and he was just like, Matt, you can't talk to everybody like they're a freaking Marine. I'm just like, well, gee, Gary, I let the guy off on a freaking warning and he proceeds to, call the SO to complain about me, which it's his right. And that's one of the beautiful things about being in America. But at the end of the day, I'm just like, at the ultimate end of the day, I could have been more professional about it. There was a certain cop badge kind of arrogance to it. But right. At the same time, often that is an essential element in your engagements. It's like you have to be that way. But some people are more savvy at it than others, and I'm definitely one of the lessers. But yeah.
To your point of the danger, what was the briefing you guys said you guys got?
Oh, so a warning order precedes an operational order. So a warning order is basically like, hey, you guys acquiring a mission is imminent, so just be on standby. Yeah. So that's basically what we were getting. So we knew that we were going somewhere as opposed to just hanging out in Italy. Because we had been down in South America since early summer of 2001 it's called the Unitas deployment. Unitas is Spanish for unity. And we basically just bounced around to a bunch of different countries in South America, having a duplicitous role in being operators as part of a task force with the DEA, doing counter-narcotic, what were we doing? We were essentially doing traditional reconnaissance missions, just gaining intelligence on certain drug factions. And this was back when the FARC, specifically in Colombia, was, they were shit hot. It was just chaos.
Hot zone down there.
Yeah, totally. But also, so we'd do that, but then we had also train as we were attached to this warship group with the Navy, and as they were bouncing around from port to port, we'd go with them and we'd do a certain training package with their commandos or something in Peru and Ecuador and Colombia, and but then 9/11 happened and we took off, but it's been a whirlwind of experiences for my little schizo mind.
Yeah, it sounds fun. I was going to comment on your ill-timed or properly timed comedic relief. Man, in the fire service, there's times that somebody will drop a joke or say something, half-ass funny, and it's really appreciated. And then if you took a random member of the public and just showed them that experience, then we'd be burned at the stake. Oh, how could you be such a terrible person? Yeah. But yeah, that comic relief in the right moment, I love it. It's like a natural coping mechanism for just the situation that's in front of you,
Yeah, and totally. And I feel like that's the most common thread is with first responders, and this is really survival, and it's mental health, it's mental release, tension. I don't know. And there was times where I'd have like, my family was very emphatic on ride-alongs when I was on patrol, especially my mom. She was like, I want to go. I'm like, Mom, you've been on like 15 ride-alongs in the last couple of years.
Unless your mother going in the car with you?
Yeah.
That's outstanding.
That's amazing.
It's California, man. You can't be holding nobody back. They all have the right to ride in the front of a cop car.
That's awesome.
But oh my gosh, if you guys don't have the misfortune of driving Code 3 in an emergency vehicle with your mom in the passenger seat, I don't recommend it. I mean, there was several times when she's literally screaming at me as if I'm driving like the family Suburban to church on Sunday.
Right.
And there's times where I'd have to unkey my mic and scream at her to shut up. And God bless her, dude, because I've been a mama's boy my whole life, but I was just like, you will shut your mouth. This is a life or death situation, and I have responsibilities. Keep your seatbelt on and don't talk. You know?
Yeah. Shit got real. Yeah.
And it was funny because I only called for, I feel like cops in general, we pride ourselves in being able to maintain control of a situation without asking for assistance. And in my time on patrol, I think there was only 2 times that I called for emergency backup. And one of them was the last ride along my mom was on with me. And it was right before Christmas and there was nothing popping off. And I was just like, she was like, so are we going to get anything? I'm like, well, there ain't nothing on the blotter. So let's go to the Walmart parking lot. So dude, we no sooner pull in a Walmart parking lot, Christmas shoppers are bustling. They got the little Salvation Army jingler in front. And sure enough, I see 2 known tweak perps that are constantly on probation, husband and wife couple, and they had the funniest names. The woman had a dude name, and the dude had kind of like a unisex name.
Right.
And she, like 15 years prior, was like super beautiful, and they both came from well-off families. And then, they tasted the meth pipe, and then it just went downhill from
Bonnie
there.
and Clyde from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we go pulling past them, and I'm just like, oh. And I yelled, I knew both of them by name, and they knew me. I was like, hey, so-and-so, go right there and don't move, because they were on probation. I was just like, nah, we're going to go shake him down. And I'm calling this out over the radio as I'm flipping around, and the husband proceeds to walk around a truck, and I see him take his jacket off, and he ditches it. Long story short, I end up going hands on both of them. I'm calling 1035 for emergency backup. My mom, and they're with their kids Christmas shopping, meth addict, whatever. And the dude was ditching his jacket because he had loaded syringes in one of his pockets. But I'm sitting there, and I go to handcuff the dude, and then as I get him down against the driver's side wheel hub, the wife jumps up at me and just goes to tackle me. Well, I go to take her down. He gets up with handcuffs on, and my mom's hiding behind the patrol unit with these people's kids. And I'm just like, having her 2-40, 1035. And so I got him down, and then I'm like kind of laying on top of her shoulder. And anyways, so that was the last day of patrol with Mom.
Christmas.
And yeah.
Awesome.
It was.
Did she at least approve of that event? Like, did she have a good time on that one?
Oh, she totally did.
Yeah.
And
nice.
at the end of shift, we're going back to the SO, and we're all like downloading. Like everybody's like, hey, James, how was it? And she was like, oh man, it was awesome.
So where are we at in your timeline from out of the military to being going into the police force in Cali and moving back? So when you landed back in Wilmington, what did you start doing then?
So we just decided overnight, for survival of our family and for our future and for our girls' sake also, we're coming back to Wilmington. Sarah, my wife, she's an RN, and we all know that nurses can virtually get jobs no matter where they go, making a quarter of what they do on the West Coast. But
right.
She had worked at New Hanover Regional, when I was still here in the Marine Corps. So overnight, she literally got hired. Like, she applied, and they interviewed her over the phone, and they said, yeah, obviously we worked with you before, and you've only gained 8 more years labor and delivery experience, bring it on. So she got hired, and we moved back, and I was foolishly optimistic that I would just, get a job. I had never really, I didn't even understand the job market in the Wilmington area and how difficult it really is. And I was like, well, Marine and former cop, and, I got my political science degree, and we moved back here, and it was crickets. I mean, we moved back June of 2014, and we actually, when we moved back, we bought a house in Curie Beach because, you know, I grew up real close to the ocean. I obviously moving back, I want to be as close to the water as we could. So we stretched every bit of our limited finances with, you know, only one job. And we bought a house in Curie Beach, and we're just like, dude, this is it. Really dug Pleasure Island community. 2 months after being here, I still don't have a job. I literally, you know, a couple of months prior, I was a full-time SWAT operator in California, and I took a food running job at Jack Mackerel's down at the pier in Curie Beach, which I don't care. I mean, I'll put my money where my mouth is. I told everybody, I was like, oh, we're at freaking Taco Bell. I don't care. Something has to change drastically. And it was funny because before the Marine Corps, I worked in restaurant, you know, Italian restaurants back home, and I loved the restaurant vibe. Anyways, I did one shift, enjoyed it, you know, it just felt good to make a change and start just moving in a different direction. But we very quickly noted that, you know, Sarah was working graveyard shift, so we'd have to hire a nanny. And I was spending more on the nanny than I was taking home. And I was like, okay, God bless, this isn't going to work. And then fortunately, one of my best friends from the Marine Corps, he owns a landscaping company here in Wilmington. And, you know, he's a one-man show. I mean, he's full-on cock diesel beast mode 24/7. And I mean, he just goes and he crushes it. But fortunately, he picks up big jobs. He's just like, dude, you want to come work on Thursday? I'm like, well, yeah. So I was able to pick up work there. And then through another mutual friend who was one of the guys that stayed in touch with me and stayed close with me the whole time we were on the West Coast that was still here, he had started working for a healthcare sales company or a healthcare company in sales. And he said, hey, dude, we got an open slot. And I was like, well, yeah, dude, healthcare. That sounds, you know, healthcare sales and everything. And he helped me get hired on with his team, and I enjoyed the work, but like it was my first true raw experience outside of the tactical industry. And it was tough. I mean, this was the first time in my life that I worked with predominantly women, which I was excited about, just because I want to experience that aspect of like a profession, because I had worked male dominated my whole freaking career. And anyway, so I got into healthcare sales for a couple of years, and you know, the pay was good, but the quality of life was just absurd. I don't know if you guys ever on LinkedIn, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, you know, not only for Signal Fire, but for my role at the university. And a lot of people post videos on LinkedIn kind of belittling the asinine practices of a lot of corporations on the sales side. Like, just like, why are you having me do this? That's a waste of freaking, you want me to like log all these calls, or do you want me to go make calls, you know? Right. And I started living that through my healthcare sales. It was just like, you know, I would represent a skilled nursing facility, and you get rated on what your occupancy rate is. And you'd have 2, you know, sudden discharges that had Medicare. And they're like, well, Matt, fill up those 2 beds. And it's like, well, I can't tell anybody. That's against the law. You have to like just whatever. And so then my anxiety went through a totally different experience, and I'm in healthcare sales. No kidding. And this was almost as dark as the real tough points, you know, in law enforcement. I'm sitting here doing what would be just a typical professional job, and it was making me so straight. So I did it for almost 2 years, and it got to the point where they were threatening to put me on like a performance improvement plan. And I'm just like, you know, I mean, when I was in the Marine Corps, you know, I saw what I wanted to go do. I wanted to go do reconnaissance. I went and did it. And, you know, I did it. When I became a cop, you know, mind you, I became a cop in 2008, which was right when the market crashed. Almost every agency in California was on a hiring freeze. And, you know, I would imagine it's probably from my experience that I still scored a job. Sure. And then I was still knocked it out. Dude, I got into healthcare sales, and I underperformed in every way. And my whole life up until that point, my friends and family, they're always like, dude, if you ever leave the tactical industry, you got to go into sales, because you just got a good, vibrant personality, and you're personable, and you like engaging with people. And I always held that in the back of my mind, like, oh, okay, yeah. I mean, yeah. Even my sister and my brother, they're 2 of my closest friends, and they're very successful in their own industries. And they always said, dude, you are made for sales. 2 years into healthcare sales. And I'm just like, oh my God, dude, like, what is going on? And it got to the point where these expectations were so heavy on me that they were threatening to fly in like, the VP of sales on the East Coast, and he was going to come in and follow me for a week. And it got to the point where I literally had an emotional breakdown at the dinner table one night. And I'm sitting there with both the girls and with Sarah, and I was really stressed out. And one of the girls asked something to me like, what's going on? And Sarah kind of said something, funny just to make them laugh and put them at ease, but let them know that, we got to support daddy right now. He's dealing with some difficult stuff. And dude, I'm just sitting here like this. My hands were covering my face and my hands started shaking. And dude, I just had tears going down my eyes. And I was just like, how am I thought this was like the decision for us. And mind you, this wasn't an end all devastation feeling. It was just like, how am I at this level of just, I feel out of my mind again. And the walls are caving in on me.
The frustration was real. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was so humbling because it's like, well, if I could, it's kind of the same asinine approach I had. Well, heck, if I could handle being deployed in the Marine Corps and people shooting at me, then I'm going to be a shoo-in and, God's gift to law enforcement. It's like, nah, that's not the case. Well, certainly it wouldn't be an issue. I want to get anxious about healthcare sales. Yeah, hell no. It's like that was just as raw as ever. And fortunately, I always also wanted to go to grad school and I wanted to get my MBA. My brother, he's got his MBA and he used to be a bigwig with Nike and now he's like up with like the home goods, TJ Maxx company. And so is my sister. I mean, they're all really successful and I'm proud of them, hardworking, intelligent. So I was like, I want to get my MBA. So I convinced my wife, let me get my MBA, invest in my future. And I was still working at the hospital my first semester and just randomly I got an email from the business school saying, hey, if you're a member of this current, MBA class, we have graduate assistant position. I was like, oh, hell yeah, 10 hours a week and make a little side change. And that turned into the full-time job that I currently have now. So that was 5 years ago. And, I started doing the business development side of the executive education center at the business school at UNCW. And, they hadn't previously had a GA in that position. And fortunately, just because of the network that I'd already established just in a few years of being here, I was able to start really nurturing relationships and start selling business like leadership development solutions and stuff like that. And it turned into a full-time job. And working at the university, the most stressful day ain't that bad. Like,
well, that's good to know.
Mind you, you're going to take a pay cut no matter what your profession is. But when you're in calls, now it's calls, when you're in meetings with faculty and they're getting in like blood dripping arguments about, intellectual property and this was my research and I led it. And they're like going to town. And there's times where me just being a stupid staff member, I'm like, did I miss something? Are we in Syria? Because you guys are giving the Syrian vibe. I don't think you're not, right?
Right.
And we're all going home tonight. Yeah. So like, calm the F down and let's just be civil about this.
I've heard academia is a savage place.
It's embarrassing. It's totally embarrassing. And I'm not a PhD, never could be. So, I can only imagine the level of just effort and time and passion that they have. But it's just like, dude, let's don't get super prima donna here. It's one thing if you're like the lead researcher at Harvard, but if you're not, then let's calm down a little bit.
Yeah.
And
what's a GA?
I'm sorry, a graduate assistant.
Okay.
So like you have undergraduate assistants with undergrad and it's just a student worker basically. Yeah. And I just took it on as a side hustle in addition to my full-time job. And, fortunately I had a boss that appreciated the dynamic that I brought to the team. And, now I've been there over almost 5 years and I love being a part of UNCW. And I love playing the role that I do as far as like the university-wide leadership team, because you have key stakeholders from the business school and from Health and Human Services and just being part of like the upper echelon conversations with regards to the future of UNCW and the strategic planning and all of that stuff is really cool. And not to mention, I keep saying key stakeholders, but there's a lot of power players at UNCW that, have, a heavy foot like in industry and in academia and in politics. And it's just kind of cool being in the middle of all of that. Not to mention, my job is growing relationships with client companies. So I I'm upset with myself if somebody comes across a CEO of, Wilmington Health or Emerge Ortho or whatever, and they're like, yeah, he said he didn't know you. And it's just like, I know, I'm working on that one. I've been working on that one. So I enjoy that. It's a lot of fun.
Well, it sounds like you're getting a little more fulfillment out of this position for sure.
The anxiety that you dealt with with that new job and the whole sales side, did you learn any anxiety management skills or?
So I would say not until probably, again, the last couple of years.
Right.
And it's because of just a few very close people in my life. Both of them are veterans. But one of them, and it's kind of, I still feel silly saying it, but just having quiet time, designating, I mean, even if it's only 5 minutes, even if it's only 3 minutes, but, preferably 10, 15 minutes where I completely am divorced from any channel of communication, minimize any disruptions. And I'm just, and it's kind of, it's a spiritual grounding moment for me. I was born and raised Christian. I've been a Christian my whole life. Have not acted as a Christian in every aspect, in every incident in my life. But I certainly don't do this every day, but I definitely endeavor to every chance I get is just spending a couple minutes and it goes back, and I'm not going to remember the exact Bible verse, but being still and knowing that God is God, being still and knowing that, yeah, we see the here and now, but that's not really the here and now. The here and now is, in my eyes, being a Christian and being, a believer in the fact that God created us as human beings, believe in the Trinity. I'm not going to get all deep spiritual here, but it blows my mind how cleansing and how re-nourishing and rejuvenating it is just to spend a few minutes, cut out disruptions, and literally just do something as simple. There was a book I read. It's called The Good and Beautiful God, and I would recommend it if you're interested in a spiritual enlightenment. But it's something even as simple as in that moment staring at leaves blowing in the wind, or listening to a bird making noise in your backyard. Just doing something as simple as that, and just being able to focus on the one element that at the end of the day is omnipresent and will be forever, and that's the fact that God is God. This is my thing.
Yeah. Yep.
So there's that, and two of my very close buddies from the Marine Corps who recently transitioned out of MARSOC, both of them were and still are pretty avid in yoga, and I'm just like, what? And then over the last 7 or 8 months, with Dave in particular, I've had some pretty in-depth conversations with Dave, and then he's kind of started walking me through some of his almost daily practices. And dude, like, I'm still excited about it. Like, I've only started really like studying some of the mechanics and some of the movements, just like I said, over the last 6 months, but just the stretching, the core strength, and just, it's like this, I don't know, euphoric almost relaxation. So I'm hoping that that's going to be an avenue that I can pursue, because I would love to be able to tell people, like, dude, I do yoga.
I'm a yogi.
Yeah. But outside of that, my two go-tos have been anything in the saltwater, and I've also been a skydiver for quite a while now. And when I was back in California up until now, I got pretty heavy into like free fly skydiving, and so being in the ocean, primarily spearfishing and skydiving, those two things I have always equated. And it's so funny because people from the outside, they're like, adrenaline junkie. It's like you're just sitting there and your heart rate's like, and it's like, dude, I'm not that way. Like, it sounds so silly. And my wife always reminds me of, like, one day you're going to grow up. And it's like, it is kind of humbling, because, like, I wish I could say, I'm a scratch golfer and I can afford it, and I got the sex appeal and, like, focus and patience to get good at golf. And it's like, I don't know. It's just not for me. But the second I punch out of a plane, every single time, with the exception of probably the first couple of times I jumped out of a plane, the second you let go of the plane and you don't feel anything other than just the elements around you, it's like what I would equate or imagine it's like for somebody to jab a vein. When Rob Campbell, Colonel Rob Campbell, author and, leadership expert. He was one of our guests on Signal Fire, and we were discussing it earlier because one of his books is in your guys' kind of lounge area. And on the episode that he was on, I'm known amongst the three of us, me, Rob, and Evan, as being like the high strung, maybe similar to you, Matt. As you're indicating earlier, I have a tendency to kind of fire from the hip sometimes.
Facts.
So when Rob was in there, he, his kind of the central theme to what he was talking about was just, that guy is cool, calm, collected, and can really just, he has this calming vibe about him. And without excuse, the guy's a retired Army colonel, did all these deployments, led thousands of soldiers. And so we gave him an opportunity to say, hey, Matt, what's a typical struggle that you have? So I brought up this, the scenario that, and I was transparent on the show, and I embraced that because, the whole point of the Signal Fire, and I know a whole point of what you guys, we have a lot of common area, is the fact that we want our struggles, we want other people's struggles to be not only stepping stones, but a testament and a resource others can use to reflect on and to say, that resonates with me, and the insight that they collectively put into how to address that or circumnavigate this is something that I can put into effect. So I brought up the fact that, driving to church on a Sunday, I'm in the passenger seat, my wife's in the driver's seat, and just, it's like, why are you not going? Well, it's red. Well, you can go right on red. There's no cars coming. And it's like, and then I'll get aggravated, and then I spend 5 minutes explaining to her why I'm right. And it comes across as belittling. It comes across as, narcissistic. And so that was just an example I gave. So Rob's whole approach is, you don't know what you know, but knowing what you know right now, giving your tenure, giving your frequent struggles, what's the likelihood of the next 5 minutes you being subjected to an environment or an incident that's going to negatively affect your vibe, your attitude? And his whole approach is just increasing your mental awareness of your situation. That was my main takeaway with Rob was, what's a tool to deal with these situations that I'm so prone to get aggro. And really it is, because I look back on so many frequent incidents and it's like, dude, I know that's going to happen. I know if we're running late, my wife's driving and we're going to church, it's like either A, I drive, or B, I take a woosah and some free diving breathing techniques and just accept the fact that this is going to be a challenge and position yourself as best as possible. Even if it comes all the way down to, hey, I'm just going to say right now, I'm trying not to get aggravated. We should be driving twice as fast, and I don't know why we're not. It's fine. I'm just going to sit here and breathe. And it comes down to literally having to do it. Just there's almost no positive there, but at least it's not a negative. And there's a lot of situations that I'm in on a frequent basis that it's it takes everything in my power, but every single time I go back to that type of situation, it's like I'm slightly better positioned each time, So really, it's just a deliberate thought process for me. That's what works for me.
So
does that make
maybe if
sense?
your spouse is cool, you can say, hey, I'm working on a little anxiety situation, have some sort of communication to get that. I don't know if pass is the right term for it, but grace, to get that little bit of grace.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a great word for it. And we're actually doing that right now. My in-laws have been here since Thursday, so they've been here for 4 or 5 days. And, 2 times over the weekend, it's it'll be middle of the day and my wife can tell I'm getting aggravated. I go into the bathroom just to splash water on my face and I hear her footsteps coming behind me. She's like, I know you're getting frustrated and I appreciate the fact that you're taking a breath, but I really need you to try harder. And it's
good for her.
Yeah,
I'm proud of her. Never met her in my life. I'm proud of her.
My neck is pulsating. It's But at the end of the day, and this is something that I've talked about on our show, is I can't really think of any situation off the top of my head where I was super passionate about trying to make my point and why I was acting the way I was in that moment. I don't think I've ever had any one of those incidents that at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, I'm glad I did that. I'm glad I really just nailed that point home to where nobody could say anything. And it's just like, what value, and it's like this personal struggle. A huge part of it is just being a dude. Second part, being the primary leader in your family. And I'm not downplaying, a wife or a mom's role by any means. But, this goes back to my own personal, beliefs about the way a nuclear family was structured. And it's freaking embarrassing because I got a lot of friends that they are so much better than me. And they've been married for 8 years. Or, and something I've been really grateful for over the last couple of years is I brought in a mentor, and this is just through personal recommendations of my close friends. A couple of years ago is when I identified I don't have a vision. I don't understand what that means to have a vision for me, my family. And they said, dude, I think you need to get like a personal mentor, somebody that you accept has authority over you in multiple avenues. And we meet on a monthly basis. We go through some books at times. But really the foundation of our relationship and our interaction is we get together once a month. He's been married for 46, 48 years, so a long time. And he is just one of the, he recently retired, has had a really successful career. And he's one of those dudes that you just stand back and look at saying, I would love to be that guy one day. I don't mean status. I just mean the quality of human being, father, friend, husband. And he is really that frequent engagement that we've been, we meet for lunch once a month. And it's cool to get feedback from him as like our conversation matures. Because over the last couple of months that we've met, Reed has told me, he's just like, dude, like it's so awesome to me just as a friend, just to see how you've progressed and how you've been maturing over the last couple of years. So that's one thing I would definitely recommend. And I'd recommend this in any aspect of life, be it, professional or personal. Every, professional athlete has a coach for their entire life. You don't become a pro and you become your own coach. You always have a coach. So if you have an aspect of your life where there's a subject matter expert that you put confidence in and you look at them and you say, I trust who this person is, what they represent, and the the collection, the character of who they are as a person, then bring them into your life and say, dude, I need help in this aspect. I mean, so many people look at marriage counseling and they're just like, oh, and trust me. I mean, I've been through those marriage counseling where you're just like, I'm already completely disconnected. We've been here for 6 minutes. And then you wait another couple minutes and then you're just envisioning like punching somebody in their trachea. And then you're envisioning like decannulating them or whatever. I don't know. But at the end of the day, there's going to be the right person out there that can, interact in your struggles in your marriage. And it's just like people are so sensitive to that. And I have an appreciation for that because I've been there multiple times. But at the end of the day, if you want to get better at an aspect of your life, you need to bring somebody in that's been there, done that, and can be a tool, a resource, and a foundation in order to just really foster an evolution in your mindset and really how you think. Because that's been my struggle, is how I think. So bringing in a mentor. I mean, if it's a personal mentor, if it for firefighters. Is there a retired battalion chief that's just like, look, dude, I'm retired now, and I care about you. I care about what the value you bring to our community, to your team, and to your engine and department, but then also to your family. I mean, bringing in a mentor I've seen it play out in so many friends' lives, and I've seen it in my own life.
I love the coach analogy. That's pretty spot on.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it, for sure.
So we got a following of firemen and then a few others. Signal fire radio. If you could boil that down to some sort of, in our service, we're all about motives. Like, why is somebody, when we started this, Hoffman asked me, he was like, if somebody walked up to you on a fire scene and started giving you advice, what would you ask them right away? And I was like, who are you? Yeah, because, like, you're not just going to take advice from some random person. So Signal Fire Radio, who are you? Like, how did you guys end up coming to be, and where are you going? What are you trying to accomplish?
So the first conversation I had that brought Signal Fire to the table was probably the end of last spring or early summer. So like May, June timeframe of 2020. And Rob, who had quickly become a very close friend, he owns a state farm agency here in Wilmington. It's only about a year and a half old, and he has grown his clientele base exponentially. And he has a extremely unique marketing strategy as to how he built the momentum so quickly. I mean, to the point where, he's gained a lot of attention from State Farm corporate. But not to mention, I mean, being I think he is the fastest growing independent insurance agency in the greater Wilmington area. So he's gotten a lot of momentum with his practice. And then one day he's like, dude, let's go have a beer. I got an idea for business. And it's like, I have buddies that have idea for businesses all the time. It's just like, they'll tell it to me and I'm just like, no, because at the end of the day, I probably just want to be able to go home and have a beer and, I don't know, do whatever I want to do and not that. Rob's a Marine. He spent about 8 years in the Marine Corps as well, transitioned like 2011, 2012. So he's a little bit after me. He had some pretty, enriching and gnarly experiences, good and bad in the Marine Corps. And I shouldn't say good and bad. I mean, they're good experiences. Ultimately, I mean, even when it comes to loss of life, there's value to that because there's so much that those lives lost that they bring to the table as far as the overall mission, the ethos, in particular of what service they're a part of. The Marine Corps. I mean, there's equity in that in the long run for the Marine Corps as a whole, and getting the reputation and the successes and the effect that the Marine Corps specifically has had in addressing, tyranny and evil in the world in the history of its existence. So Rob approached me and said, dude, how many organizations, associations, events have you gone to that had some sort of niched approach to supporting active duty or veterans in some aspect of their life, being entrepreneurs, just being able to leave the military and go into the civilian sector and be successful? And, if you had to guess, how many organizations have you participated with? And I was like, I don't know, probably half a dozen in the last 4 or 5 years. And it was just something that I wasn't really super passionate about, but people would be like, hey, we're putting an event on at PPD and Matt, you're a veteran. You want to come and tell your story on a panel? It's like, I'm an attention whore. I like people. So it's like, okay, if you're going to give me an opportunity to go talk about military and be with military people, then yeah, that makes sense. And he's like, yeah. So about the same for me. Over the last 5, 6, 7 years, I've been involved with a handful of organizations. At the end of the day, how many of those do you think are really having an impact on veterans' lives? And it took me about half a second. I was like, little to none. It's like there's all these campaigns for suicide awareness, which God bless. We absolutely have to be aware of it, but we also have to have the mindset and the perception that we have to go beyond awareness. And so many of these organizations, they're just talking about awareness, or they come together and they bring in all these companies like a career fair for veterans, and all these conversations happen, and we're promoting, the dire need for really generating and fostering a more healthy and successful transition into the private sector for military people. And I'm just like, none. I mean, I love participating, but at the end of the day, I'm just like, what are we doing? I mean, these people are still going home without jobs. They're not equipped to, in this aspect of their life, to go on and be successful. So he's just like, dude, I got an idea. Let's start a podcast. And the whole podcast is going to revolve around mind, body, spirit, and tribe. Being a signifier in our community and being a voice, being a channel, primarily focused around the disconnect and the chasm that exists between your military life and then being successful as a civilian. And when I say successful, it's certainly not limited to professionally. Going back to mind, body, spirit, and tribe, the conversations that we have on every episode of Signal Fire in some aspect revolve around supporting one of those 4 core elements in our quality of life. So, mind, we talk about mental wellness. Episode 6, it's called Mind Medicine, and Rob's wife is a nurse practitioner, specializes in mental health, and that's been our most, I think, one of our most popular episodes thus far. It's been, and my wife's a nurse, and so many we were just part of a text thread earlier today with one of our good friends, Liz Hartman, who's also a Marine, works for Edward Jones up in New Bern, and she happens to be an influencer on LinkedIn, which is kind of a big deal. But I'm just now learning that. But Liz, radically dynamic personality, has so much value to contribute to not only being a financial advisor or whatever, sorry if that was incorrect, but whatever she does for Edward Jones. But she does her own podcast. She posts all these super poignant 60-second videos on LinkedIn that revolve around so many aspects that our conversations do. But even today, she was ranting and raving about like wanting to learn more about the ketamine therapies that Jenna's practice. Is it Trillium or Trinity? Trillium. Okay. Because those are two local companies that have both historically been mental health in some aspect. Anyways, they've had a lot of substantial breakthroughs in not only their research, but their therapies. So, there's that aspect, but I'm getting off subject. So he said, let's start having a conversation that, at least in this target-rich environment of southeastern North Carolina, between two of the largest military installations in the country, and the reach of the signal on 106.7, the Big Talker, is we can hit people almost as far away as Bragg, Lejeune, and then all the way down to South Carolina. And let's start having a conversation where our stories are testaments and can be resources for individuals, but even more importantly, start bringing on individuals that have nuanced experiences. Some of them aren't veterans. Some of them are military spouses. A big organization that we have a frequency to engage with is the Honor Foundation. The Honor Foundation is a nonprofit organization designed at equipping. I'm not going to do this justice, but they basically have, I believe it's a 3 or 4 month cohort every 4 months or so, where they bring in I think 25 to 30 transitioning soft personnel from the military, so special operations forces, and so they have a cohort that lasts 4 months, and they meet 2 nights a week. Right now it's virtual, but they basically go through this entire transition where it's allowing them to basically take off their military unit. And this is a philosophical, mental, spiritual, every aspect of their life. Start taking off that uniform. Stop identifying as a reconnaissance Marine or a Raider or a SEAL or a Ranger or Green Beret, PJs, JTAC. Like you're no longer going to be that very, very soon. And at the end of the day, as valuable as that contribution has been to our country and your own personal development, in 6 months, it's not going to matter, because what is going to matter is the mindset and the perception that you gain and the posture that you put on moving forward, and changing your perspective and not identifying as a colonel, not identifying as this high-speed operator, but identifying as Matt, identifying as Jeremy and Steve. Anyways, they have the local chapter in Surf City, which focuses primarily on the MARSOC community out of Camp Lejeune. And we've had a series of guests from there. One of them is the director of programming, Dave Polaris. He's a former reconnaissance Marine and Marine Raider, and he and Lindsay Cashin, who is she's the vice president of people. We call her the VP of Peeps. I like it. They have really made the Wilmington community of the Honor Foundation. It's becoming every day more of an integral and interwoven part to. It does focus on the soft community, but it really has been this growing movement in this area, and the amount of organizations and businesses that have become not only familiar but fond of the Honor Foundation. Because you also have to understand, for every cohort that comes through, they assign a coach to work with a particular person through the whole cohort. And I think you typically only have one fellow that you work with. So they're bringing in all these business leaders from the region that are gaining greater insight into the lives of not only military personnel, but special operation forces, and really being educated on the disconnect that exists in supporting the transition to ensure that nobody falls through the cracks, and that we're being a resource and we're being supportive in there for these transitioning service members. And anyway, so that was kind of the impetus vision of Signal Fire. Let's start a weekly podcast that's going to air on a radio station once a week through this calendar year. And let's just bring in subject matter experts. Let's bring in retired military persons, anybody that has some sort of value to bring to the conversation. And the momentum just in the last couple of months that we've been gaining with, and primarily through promotion on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook, it's been incredible. And the feedback that we've been getting and the testament, I have friends constantly texting me, friends from California, friends in Japan that are, retired from the Marine Corps or Navy or getting ready to. And they're just like, dude, this resonates with me on a level that so many other experiences or podcasts or we're going to start doing events really soon. We have an event actually coming up August 7th where we're throwing like a huge shindig at the battleship. And it's going to have a Blue Hawaii theme, but we're bringing in live music. We're bringing in Blue Shark Vodka, who's going to be our premier vodka sponsor, Mission Barbecue. But we're basically going to be bringing in an event where, community members, anybody who wants to be involved in the conversation, and just being present to support the efforts that Signal Fire Radio is doing. And it's not just around military people. We want to educate civilians almost more so than we do the military, because we need, that's the whole aspect, the whole element. What is a signal fire? It's an extremely important message that's trying to be conveyed as quickly as possible across great spans. And it was funny because when Rob was first describing it to me, I was like, he's like, you ever seen the signal fire scene in Lord of the Rings? I was like, dude, I'm not a Lord of the Rings person. I didn't watch Harry Potter. And he's like, dude, first of all, they're two totally different stories. And I'm like, I know that, but that's Amen. What I'm saying is I'm just tying them all into the like weird little hermit, like whatever stuff. Anyway, so he showed me a scene from Lord of the Rings and it was pretty sick. It's something crazy happens. They're like, we need to let the king know. And then, you see, it makes you feel like it crosses a continent in an hour and you just see one mountaintop light up and then 50 miles away, you see another glow light. And he says, dude, that's what I want this conversation to be. I want to start a fire that highlights, hey, we want to be a signal fire in our community. We want to be a voice, and then we want to start bringing in other people who are adding to the voice, adding to the fire. And then what really galvanized it was we all have a pretty strong appreciation for metalcore music. I've been a Killswitch Engaged fan for, probably 05, 06. I attribute that to my younger brother he's a music aficionado. I thought I was a music whore, but he's like above and beyond. But so I've been into metalcore and anyways, Rob, and this was right after Atonement, which is one of the most recent albums of Killswitch, came out with the song Signal Fire on it. And he's just like, this whole thought came to me when I really started listening to this song Signal Fire. And I was like, I think I've heard it. And then I listened to it. I was just like, oh yeah, that like hits me. Then that got way exacerbated when I read the freaking story of what Signal Fire was. And long story short, the current lead singer of Killswitch previously was the lead singer from like the early 2000s until like 05, 06. And then Howard Jones stepped in for whatever reason, and he took over as lead singer. Well, over the period of the next 5, 6, 7 years, Killswitch's popularity like skyrockets. And it should also be important to note that like in the metalcore industry, Killswitch has historically been known for extremely like positive lyrics. So if you listen to the words of Signal Fire, the whole nucleus of it, and Howard Jones wrote it. So he wrote it outside of the band and then very reluctantly presented it to the band just because it was on his heart. And when the band read it and understood his story, they're just like, no effing way, we're not doing this song. Yeah. But the chorus to the song goes, given to fight, strength realigned, the signal fire is light. There's hope just in sight. The signal fire's light. And the whole song was written around that day that he almost killed himself. And he attributes still being alive to a realigning of strength. He reached out to somebody and it inadvertently ended up kind of saving his life. So the song's really focused on suicide awareness, which is valuable. But if you read the words, it's unfreaking believable. And it laid the groundwork for what we want the signal fire to be. We see an issue, it's a dire need, and we're given to fight. We're not somebody that's going to go quietly into the night and not shout this from the mountaintops like a signal fire. And so I just encourage you guys to read the lyrics and and if you watch the dynamic of like the music video, like I'm aging myself, like total 80s kid. It's like music video, what are you talking about? But if you watch the dynamic of how because what happens is the first chorus or the first verse of the song, it's just the the band as they are now without Howard Jones. And it's cool to note, being a metalcore fan, you don't traditionally associate African Americans with metalcore. Howard Jones is big, bald, black, and freaking badass.
Ain't no joke.
There's
That's
some
for sure.
there's some awesome black metalcore singers. Lazy
Well,
Witherspoon.
and you're gonna humble me because I don't have an extensive knowledge.
Oh, man. But yes, they're few and far between.
Yeah, and
Howard
so
Jones
so it makes it something so much more valuable in my eyes. But so the whole first verse, it's just the current band singing it, and then all of a sudden you see that right before the first chorus starts, Howard Jones is sitting with his back to the camera, and he's sitting on some of the recording equipment. He's got a microphone in his hand, and you can see he's starting to rock and get into the song, and then he kind of starts harmonizing during the first chorus with Josh, and they're sitting there singing to each other saying, dude, the signal fires a light. It's just, oh my gosh, the synergy. And we're like, boom, that's definitely the name of it. That song is going to be the epicenter of every episode. And, we're at the point now where we're trying to bring the band in. And I have no doubt that we're going to be able to do that at some point when that's going to
Can I
be.
please be there?
I just want to sit in the corner
Can I
when that
please-
happens, by the way.
I have also followed Kill Switch Engage
A
since
long time.
early 2000s,
Actually,
yeah.
there's actually a theme song to one of my projects in high school.
Shout out to Andy Owens. He's who connected me with the primary guys. But Andy was like, "Hey, dude, I'm sitting here listening to my boys' podcast," and he told me about it, and he was just like, "You guys should meet." And we're brand new to podcasts. I'm like, "What the hell? I'm gonna go talk with somebody else on a podcast?" It's like, dude, I can barely hold my own. And then I talked to Rob and Heaven, and they're just like, "Matthew, damn it, absolutely, go over there." No, they're part of the signal fire. You get over there and just do it. And that was literally what Rob said. And I was like, oh, okay. And, but no, just as soon as I walked in here and I started just getting a feeling for just your guys, your presence, your vision, your conversation, and what I would interpret as your, I don't want to say you guys have a mission because you guys are fairly hands off, but at the same time, I feel like every one of your episodes, you guys are contributing a certain nugget of value to every freaking listener. And so we're excited to be a part of y'all's movement, and we look forward to having you guys on Signal Fire. We haven't gotten to the bourbon level, and I'm actually kind of humble because I did take a picture, and I'm going to send it to Rob and Evan saying, hey, we need to up our game. We always have copious amounts of Mexican beer, typically Modelo. But that's really
bourbon's a more superior lubricant.
Oh, it absolutely is. It's higher octane, burns at a lower temperature. It doesn't gum up if you let it sit over winter. Mm-hmm. I definitely look forward to you guys being on, and I'm curious to see what the dynamic would be because I feel like the three of you guys and the three of us, tomfoolery and ballyhoo. That's what comes to mind.
Right.
Ass
All
grabbing,
about some
ball tickling, dick slapping.
We're all about some ball tickling. I've really enjoyed it. I've really loved just about every episode. I can't complain on any of them.
Well, dude, I appreciate that, but I want to be very specific in the fact that I'm not the brains, inspiration, or unfortunately vision of that
But
operation.
you are part of the tripod, and you did mention
I am part of the
you guys
tripod.
have talked about the tripod.
I think I'm the short leg of the tripod.
You take a leg out, you'll fall over.
True. But I really have to attribute it to Rob and Evan. Rob specifically with the overall vision, but if you see the ever-going text thread, and our texts start middle of the night because both of them get up at 0:30, which I'm like, dude, I'm sorry. I've never been that person, and I don't get up anytime before 5:30, and that's early for me. So I will wake up at 5:30 to anywhere between 35 to 40 to I've woken up to 140 new text messages from 4:30 to 5:30. But
I think I need to be added to that text thread. I'm a very early person too. 3:30, 4
Yes, he
o'clock.
is.
That's it.
I don't get it. And it's so humbling because some of the people that I respect most in my life, that's one of their foundation daily practice. I get up and I'm just one, and I sit underneath the stars until
I did not do that. But
He mops the floor at the fire station.
yeah,
I am not kidding you. I have a friend who will sit 30 minutes every morning, and I can't remember what time he goes out. He's a retired major from the Marine Corps. He's now a bigwig executive with SAS up in Raleigh-Durham area. He's hardcore into yoga. He gets up every morning. I want to say, let's say 4:30, completely naked, no matter what the wet temperature is. He goes in his backyard, sits on his deck. I would imagine he's sitting like the meditation,
like Rafiki from Lion King.
Yes. With the colorful nose.
Yeah.
Dude, that guy was so funny.
Simba.
He sits outside, and there's something like eye-opening to this. He sits outside every morning and meditates for 30 minutes completely nude in the dark. I mean, this isn't a sexual thing, it's a spiritual thing. And then he proceeds to come inside, shit, shower, and shave. And then when he's taking his shower, he always makes it a point, the last minute in the shower, he flips it completely cold and he doesn't move. And he just stands underneath the water and he sways a little bit from side to side. It's something to do. And there is health aspects of submerging yourself in very violently cold environments.
Yeah.
Anyways, he swears by it. And there's something, when I look at it, I'm just like, there's something to that. But if I reach that point in my life, I'll do it, but I'm not there yet.
I'd be so worried about the shrinkage.
No, my practice is the other way around, and it's something in my brain, but I do similar to the same thing, but how most people will turn the water on and then do whatever they need to do and wait for the water to get hot before they get in. I get in and turn the water on and wait for it to get hot. So it's cold initially. I do this at almost every shower. But it's kind of the opposite. I guess it helps my brain say, it's going to get better. 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 So, yeah, but I'll get in and cut the water on. So it's cold to start.
Does this typically happen when your wife's neglected you for a couple of days?
No. Well, I kid around and I say, the only time I get to see my wife naked if I set up a trail camera in the bathroom.
Oh my God, that's about as country as. Oh my God, that's freaking
awesome. Now, Matt, we've definitely enjoyed having you, brother, for sure.
Well, I really, really appreciate the invite. You guys have, I thought that we hit the ground running, just being able to be at 106.7 The Big Talker. This is another level. I was expecting Joe Rogan to come popping out of the back like, hey, Matt, we're smoking a doobie back here. You want to join us? It's like,
take some
wow.
DMT.
Yeah, I've appreciated it. Where can folks find Signal Fire?
Yeah, so any live streaming platforms, so Spotify, Apple, Signal Fire Radio is the name of our podcast. You can get a hold of me, Rob, Evan, or Paige, who's a current and new team member. She's also a Marine, former active duty Marine, working to finish her undergrad at the business school. But Paige, Matt with 2 T's, Rob or Evan, EVAN, at signalfire.media. And we've also started an apparel line also that's actually has kind of just freaking blown up. It's just T-shirts right now. I'm wearing one of them. This is our charcoal with our Signal Fire Steve logo on the chest.
It's a beautiful shirt.
I enjoyed hearing about the Easy Hippie backstory today when I was listening to
Dude, and oh my gosh, the amount of interest and clout and just inertia that conversation has generated, and it really lies at part of the soul of what we are at Signal Fire. This is something that on Pat Fenson's episode, it was just so humbling for me, because when I got out of the Marine Corps, it was just like, I got to find a job. I got to go do this. Got to do this. And one of the most frequent and best practices that we've learned just in the last 3 months is taking as much time off as you can from your military service to beginning to serve on the civilian side, to find yourself, to reconnect with who you are as a person. And I totally missed that. Totally. A huge part of it was maturity. A huge part of it was lack of insight. And a huge part of it was just like, I need to get shit done because I got a wife and she's working her ass off supporting the family. So that whole aspect lies at the heart of, Rob, before we started Signal Fire, was promoting this concept of, you got to take your time and find yourself if you can, go to the Maldives. And, it can get a little extreme. It's like, go to the Maldives and surf for a month. It's like, well, shoot, that'll cost $12,000. I can't afford that. But even if it meant sitting in your backyard or just at your house for a month and spending time alone, or just whatever that would be for you to start reconnecting with who you are as a person, not as a military service member. And some guy, he was promoting the story on LinkedIn, and some, veteran salt dog reached out to him saying, dude, no, you got to way off. You got to get out there and get on it and find that job and lock down that income and blah, blah, blah. And Rob responded by saying something tactful and, yes, thank you. And his response was, whoa, easy, hippie. And, you have to understand, Rob has this long
hair.
Yeah.
Long blonde hair.
Yeah, he's
Light bulb.
yeah. So
That's a T-shirt. Easy.
and it was funny, and in that moment, Rob said, "Easy hippie is going somewhere. I thank you for your input, sir. I support your perspective as a human being, and I will never talk to you again." And he didn't say that, but he
Right.
said it basically. Thank you, and we appreciate it. Bye bye. And man, when people have been getting educated on that story, and it really does. It lies at the heart of. It's like that's part of the conversation that we need to have, you know. So it's exciting, and you guys will be on the show, and we're looking forward to it. And I promise we will have a bottle of top shelf bourbon of some sort.
Sounds
I'm gonna hold
great.
you to it.
Yeah, sounds great.
All right. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, appreciate you.
Hey, I appreciate you guys, and thank you guys so much for y'all's service. I mean, I served the community in Sacramento for almost 8 years, and you guys have all done precipitously more than that. So thank you guys for the service to our community, and for being just incredible stewards of our public service here in Wilmington. Your guys' conversation is part of the Signal Fire. You guys are being a Signal Fire in our community in your own way. And we want to support you guys in any way we can. And if that means coming together and having fruitful conversation while drinking alcohol and,
We are always down.
worthless
Always.
banter,
Yeah.
let's
Always.
do it.
All right.
Dude, thanks for coming.
Wrap.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
It takes so much from me, and the gift that you're giving's like a crutch to me. Do it if you want, take him round the front and take him round the back to see if it's killing me. Show him all the tricks that you learned from me.
The first time I saw the hides, I saw the potential. Heart stop beating. Resuscitation's essential. I'm mental. Mouth to mouth is necessary. Falling for females is always kinda scary. So preparing for the worst, I kept me cortisone. Shit so raw quick if you don't act strong. But it was all we could do to keep in check. Much respect. We were both up on deck.